Hello everyone. Uh, Welcome to the Special Olympics Women in Sport webinar series presented by Aerie. During this series, we have incredible hosts and panelists joining us around the world. We will discuss important topics around women in sport. Today's webinar will focus on entertaining and retaining girls and women in sport. Thank you to our incredible sponsors Aerie who are making the Women in Sport webinar series possible. This webinar offers simultaneous interpretation in 8 languages. You can choose your language using the globe button at the bottom of the screen. Please add any questions you have for the speakers in the chat or Q&A function. First, let's hear from Special Olympics CEO Mary Davis, who has a very special welcome message for us all.
Hi everyone, I want to welcome you to this webinar series on women in sport. We all know the value of participation in sport and sports training and the benefits that that can bring to everybody. But I'm happy that you are concentrating this series of webinars on the importance of participation for women and girls, and particularly women and girls with intellectual disability. I want to thank Aerie, our sponsors, for their generosity, which is supporting this series and enabling us to extend its reach by providing live language interpretations. Thank you also to our ongoing sponsor, Gallagher, for their investment in sport and their investment in all of our athletes and coaches. And of course, to the panelists, the hosts, the attendees, all of you for taking the time to be with us. We want to encourage the girls and women in our movement to use their experience and their roles to encourage more girls and women to get involved. We want to challenge our leaders and decision makers to showcase and celebrate the contribution of our female leaders. This series brings together female leaders from inside and outside the Special Olympics community. We are all connected by our desire to make sports more welcoming, and a much more inclusive place for girls and women around the world. We recognize that we are strongest when we work together. We can lift each other up, and we can celebrate and learn from each other's successes. And we've seen this through our relationship with so many sports federations. And these sports federations have very specific strategies within their sport to address the issue of keeping women and girls in sport and in sports leadership roles. So as we work together with these federations, we can learn from them how they do it and how they address this for women and girls in their organization, and we can use their best practices to benefit our own participation. So no matter who you are or how you identify, we want to invite and challenge you to strive to make our community a more inclusive place for every girl and woman that wants to be involved in sport. We are making great strides. For example, if we look at the recent World Games in Berlin, we had 52% male and 48% female participation, making up the 6,500 athletes that participated. But we know the overall percent is lower than that, roughly about 38, 39%. So we have some work to do. And team sports, when we look at those, there's more of a gap in terms of the percentages of male and female participation, and particularly across things like soccer, basketball, badminton. So we have a lot done, but we've an awful lot more to do. So my message to you today is to get moving and get more women and girls involved in sport, particularly on this International Day of Women. So good luck and good luck with the series. And I look forward to seeing greater participation as a result. Thank you.
Before I present our panelists, I would like to tell something about myself. I am Julia Fonsen, 27 years old. I am from Tampere, Finland. I am an athlete. I have played football, unified basketball, and floorball. Now I play unified golf and billiards. I am a Special Olympics athlete leader. I am member of the Special Olympics Eurasia Athlete Leadership Council. In the Special Olympics World Summer Games in Berlin, I was the assistant team leader for Special Olympics Finland. I have also other responsibilities in organizations. For example, I am a member of the athlete committee of the Finnish Paralympic Committee. Family and friends are important for me, and I like to spend a lot of time with them. Let me present you our great panelists. Chelsea Schultz has been a Special Olympics athlete for 37 years and has been involved in Special Olympics in 4 different stages in the United States. She is an athlete leader with Special Olympics New Hampshire and part of their athlete leadership council. She was the first female powerlifter with Special Olympics New Hampshire and has competed at national and world level in powerlifting. Welcome, Chelsea. Dr. Ruth Bratsier is a coach and research. She is specializing in inclusion and diversity in sport. Her PhD looked at how disability, gender, and ethnicity influence young people's experience of PA. Her other project work. It is a project aiming to get more girls participating in sport and women involved in coaching. She is also an active football coach, having experience coaching boys and girls of all abilities and backgrounds. Welcome, Ruth. Christina Molly is the Chief Membership and Impact Officer of the International Paralympic Committee from Canada. She has held various leadership roles promoting accessibility and disability inclusion within the government of Canada and the Paralympic movement. Christina has also worked as a police director to Canada's Minister of Employment, Workforce Development and Disability Inclusion. Christina is passionate advocate for the power of sport to effect positive social change worldwide. Thank you for joining us, Christina. Then we will continue to the panel discussion. At first, I would like to ask, are there barriers or challenges that stop girls and women from playing sports? And how can we overcome these issues? I would like to ask Chelsea and Ruth to share their thoughts. Chelsea, would you like to begin?
Hold on. Yeah. Oh, thank you, Julia. Sorry about that. I was unmuted, but sorry. That's a good question. When most girls usually have fear or self-conscious about themselves joining sports because they're afraid they're not strong enough, not fast enough like the guys. But my story is I overcome it. When I was doing powerlifting 2 years ago, there was only male in New Hampshire are doing the powerlifting. So I was a little scared, I'll admit it. It's just a lot of fear in girls. So how I overcome that fear? Well, it came confident to do powerlifting. I have a lot of good support. You should have a good support and who support you and push you through and help you pass the fear to want to do the sport at the same as the guy. So for me to do the powerlifting with the guy, I got over my fear. Yeah, there was a lot of tough times where I wanted to cry because I thought I wasn't good enough or frustration. And I was like, I'm not strong to be the guy, but that was all you had. So sometimes girls will have it in their head like they're not fast enough, not strong enough. But you can always you can overcome that fear by you have faith in yourself for women who can play sports at the same as the guy. So I didn't give up. I just kept trying and kept going, and then I realized I am strong. I am strong like the guy. I am faster like the guy. You just want to overcome that fear because if you don't get over that fear, it'll consume you because you're not only the woman will be afraid for it, they'll be afraid of life too. In their life. So that's how I overcome my fear to get into powerlifting and be with the guy. And now my future goal is to help other female athletes to join the sport that they're afraid of. And I want to help them overcome their fear and challenge that fear so they don't have to be afraid and be equal with the guy. And that's how I overcome my fear by joining the powerlifting team with the guy at New Hampshire. Thank you.
Thanks for the question, Yulia and Chelsea. Really tough answer to follow because that was such a really good answer.
No problem. Thank you.
No pressure. I think
Thank you, Chelsea. Then Ruth, what do you think?
Perfect, thank you. It's a really good question, and I think when I think about barriers that women might face in sport, whether that's participating or coaching, I try and think about it like different levels almost. So I think there's some barriers which are like quite like societal level. So what do we think sport should look like? What do we think women should act like? And maybe they don't quite match up all the time, which might put women off. I think there's barriers at like an organizational level, so around access and opportunities and facilities. Is there is there facilities for women? Do the local football team have a girls team, or is it only for boys? Things like that. And then I think there's also probably barriers at more of like an individual level. So Chelsea, you just talked really nicely there about how, you know, you had some fear about kind of going into that. And that I think is a really good example of a barrier at an individual level. And I think, you know, when we look at the solutions, that's the $1 million question, isn't it? Like if we had easy fixes, then we probably wouldn't need to be here on this call today, would we? But for me, I think solutions might have to look different. So I think it depends a lot on context and sport and geography. You know, what it's like in England might be very different to what it's like in New Hampshire, for example. But I think the best solutions are the ones which target different types of barriers at the same time. So it might, you know, I'm working on a project that I'm lucky enough to work with the Special Olympics on, called I Coach Girls. And what we're trying to do through this project is help people on an individual level. So give more women more confidence to step into coaching, give more girls opportunities to go and play in a safe kind of girls only environment, but also work with organizations to create more accessible opportunities, to provide more facilities, to provide more support. So that's how I always look at it, is trying to target different levels of barriers to target the solutions at, if that makes sense. But it's not an easy job for sure. But yeah, that would be how I would kind of think about the barriers and then also the solutions.
Yeah, thank you, Ruth. We know how important it is to feel safe and welcome in sport, especially for girls and women. I would like to ask, how can sports organizations and communities make sport more welcoming and inclusive for all girls and women? Christina, would you like to begin?
Sure thing. Thanks, Yulia. And I've really enjoyed the answers so far, and so maybe I can build on what Ruth just mentioned as well about the fact that in order for sport to be safe, we have to address both those kind of attitudinal barriers as well as the physical ones that exist. And so I have this memory that's just burned into my mind. I was working in a refugee camp in Rwanda, and we were engaging women and girls in sport, a lot of them for the first time. And we had our practices and they were pretty sheltered and we were all together, but it was the first game and there were quite a few people that came to watch. And they started laughing and pointing at the poor girls that were just starting to learn how to play. And I thought, oh my gosh, what have I done? This was a terrible idea. But then we, several months passed, everyone kind of got used to this. And a few months later, we had a tournament and it went to a shootout. And at the end of it, the entire camp did a parade with all the girls like carried on people's shoulders throughout the camp because they were so proud of what this team had achieved. And so there were a few lessons there to me. One is that there's power in numbers in terms of, sometimes you need to have others around you and there to kind of push through what can be difficult. And then the other is we have to persevere, and that it's not always easy right from the beginning, but if we keep kind of working on it together and with our other allies, like men who are also coaches and members of the community, then we can make what becomes a really safe space for women and girls. And then, of course, on the actual facility part, I work a lot to make facilities accessible for people with disabilities. And that's a barrier that people can't even, if they can't even access the field of play or the arena or the changing rooms, then it won't be a safe space for all. And so that's a really important factor too. So I really agree with what Ruth mentioned. And so to me, it's strength in numbers, persevering, and then also addressing kind of some of the fundamental infrastructure or facility access needs.
Thank you, Christina. Then Chelsea.
Thank you, Julie. Thank you. That that's a really good topic, Christina. I like all your stuff. When you were talking about the pointing and the talent, like, oh, you're not good enough. I had a couple of those, like, oh, the guy was like, oh, I'm stronger than the guy and stuff like that. But I didn't let that get to me. So I would just like address to the coach, which I did, and they talked to them. So for me, they make sure we respect each other, be a team player, making sure the guys get along with me, and we all get along great. They help each other, support each other, and I also like we can help each other gain their confidence, and they should help you with confidence. You know what? Confident to help confident in my job, and also team player, and they should address that I'm in a boy playing, and I mean, yes, I'm a woman, but I think we all should be deserved with the same respect for each other, and making sure we are safe, and making sure we do everything right, and not be able to hurt in the sport. And so I would hoping that we can all get along and stuff, and making sure like confidence and gain each other trust, and making sure the whole team can trust each other, confident with each other, support, and that's order to make sure the female are safe on that team, to feel welcome, to make sure they're comfortable with the team. And that's how I did with my team powerlifting in New Hampshire, and that's including Special Olympic Team USA from the World Game last year. So that's what I would do, like get together and make sure everybody feel welcome, like introduce each other, make sure they're comfortable with each other, and respect everybody and equal.
Thank you, Charles.
You're welcome, Julia.
I would also like to say my thoughts on this topic. When I was playing football in a mixed team and was only girl in the team, the boys always laughed at me. I did not feel that I was welcome to play with boys. When I changed to the girls' team, there was no bullying. I think sports communities and organizations should teach coaches and players to treat everyone as equal and face everyone without prejudice. Then to the next question. What role do mentors, coaches, and role models play in inspiring and supporting girls and women in their athletic pursuits? I would like to invite all our panelists to answer this question. Ruth, would you like to begin?
Yeah, perfect. Again, another great question. I think for me, role models are hugely important. When I go back to the first question, and we talked about barriers, and we talked about, on a society level, like attitudes towards women in sport and societal opinion. I think for me, role models is a huge way to challenge that, because if we've never, for example, I grew up playing football, soccer was my sport, still is my sport, and I never saw any women coaches until I was about 16, 17. So I never believed that I could go and do it, because it just wasn't kind of possible in my world, if that makes sense. And it wasn't until I started to see some of those role models that I began to change my opinion of what I could do and what I could go on to achieve. So for me, I think role models are massive. And when we think about role models, I think we sometimes think about the people on television, and we think about the professional athletes and the professional coaches, which are hugely important. But I think as well, we can't underestimate the power that role models on a local level can have. So, you know, the woman who's coaching her son or daughter's team in whatever sport it might be, she is a role model for the boys and girls in terms of normalizing women in sport, normalizing women as leaders and things like that. So I would argue that role models are hugely important, and organizationally and culturally, we have a responsibility to support more women in sport, to recruit more women, to actively try and remove barriers to allow women to be those role models. And that's where I think, you know, I think you mentioned in your question, Julie, about mentoring. That's, you know, a prime example of how we might support more women into you know, coaching or leadership or those role model positions. And again, I think at a local level, grassroots level, doesn't have to be Olympics or professional sport. I think role models on the ground level are just as important, if not more important, for, you know, what impact we can have on kids and young people playing sport.
Thank you, Ruth. Then Chelsea.
Thank you, Julie. Ruth had a lot of good answer to those questions. I agree with her. When she was talking about she never saw any coach, a lot of female coaches. This past year, I never had. Well, I did have lady coaches, but not one-on-one or, you know, one-on-one sport, because I'm always on the team with the guy coach. So when I started training with powerlifting, Sharon Palermo, my powerlifting coach, was the first female to work with coaches to work with me one-on-one ever. So that was hard at first, but I gained her trust, she gained my trust, and she opened a whole new world for me for powerlifting and got me more confident in myself. And she also put me hard to just drive to it. She wouldn't let me give up. She won't let me back down. She wouldn't let me quit. So that's what you want in coaching. I mean, especially when you have a role model like her, you want to have somebody who can push you through this and make you understand that you can be, if you could be as strong as the guy, you could be powerful as the guy, you could be up there equally with them. And that's what she did with me for the last 2 years. Yeah, she's still doing it now. But anyway, she would help me out. She was a great mentor, not only mentor, coach, but also friend. She helped me in life too, where she helped me overcome my fear and to be able to feel safe around the sport environment. And that's what you need to have people like her and some other mentors. I do have other mentors who are female as well, but they all help me and stuff, and I really appreciate that, because without them, you probably scared or uncomfortable, and you want to have somebody like a mentor, a role model, or coach right there to make you comfortable and help you get out of your comfort zone and tell you the right thing, like, oh, you're strong enough, you're strong enough, you have confidence in yourself, and they know that you can do it. And that's why we need mentor and a good role model to help you help you up and help you gain confidence. So that's what I think about the role model and mentor in female role. And because without Sharon and a bunch of my coaches there, I probably won't be doing sports. But because there's 1,000 of time, I want to quit. I do, really. But they keep pushing me to do better and better, and I did. I didn't give up. I want to thank all my friends and mentors, role models. They were awesome, and now I have more confidence in me, and not to mention the fact that all the sport I'm playing right now in basketball, I'm the only girl on the team, and that's hard. But I did it, and I overcome my fear with all this role model, mentor, coaching to make me comfortable and make me stronger. And I got more confident in me because of them. And that's what we need in our life, not in just sport, in life too.
Thank you, Chelsea.
You're welcome.
Then Christine.
That's a tough act to follow. I think you're right, Chelsea, that we are all here because we've gotten support from other women and girls along the way. And so I think it's really important for us to try to identify the opportunities where we can help boost other people up or give them a hand, you know, when they're on their own pathway, and kind of take that time to be that for someone else, because we can definitely all identify with the people who have been that for us and have kind of taken the extra time to consider our contribution valuable and to let us know that, and just how good that felt to be boosted in that way. So I think for me, especially in sport and at work, trying to identify that in others, and in particular, people who are maybe starting out, whether it's in sport or whether it's in their career, and trying to find ways to make sure that their voice is heard, so that we're really kind of strengthening the collective voice of women in all of these different avenues and experiences.
Thank you, Christina. I have the next question for you. Christina, visibility of women in sport is very important, but especially for women and girls with disabilities. How can we address the gender gap in media, and why is it important to increase the visibility of female athletes?
I think that one of the things that we have kind of the power of, especially with sport in the disability space, and so whether it's through Special Olympics or the Paralympic Games, that what people really engage with are the stories, and the stories of the athletes are just as meaningful if you're a female athlete or a woman as they might be for someone else. So I think that presents a real opportunity to make sure that we're maximizing the stories of female athletes in these platforms that we have. And I also think that why that's important is because this doesn't just open up the opportunity for other girls and women to participate in sport. It also creates kind of much bigger social outcome opportunities. And the example that I give on that is that the Paralympic Games in London in 2012 were, you know, record breaking at the time in terms of viewership. And before the games, you know, the majority of people couldn't name a Paralympic athlete. And then after the games, people could name 5. So that was just, you know, a real shift in terms of awareness and visibility. And in particular, there was one, and her name is Sophie Christensen. And she won 4 medals at the Paralympic Games in London. She's from the UK. And her smile was everywhere. She was, you know, a kind of poster child of the games. It was amazing. And she talks about the fact that before the games, she got her MBE. So she had, you know, this fancy degree. She was trying to get a job, and she could not get past the interview stage in order to get a job. And then after the games, all of a sudden, not only did she get an interview, but she landed this amazing job as an analyst at Goldman Sachs. And she really credits the fact that the visibility of the games kind of opened the doors to the opportunity for her to kind of present her own abilities that had always been there, but just needed to be kind of finally recognized and appreciated. And so I think that's also why it's so important that we have these images of female athletes and women, and we tell these stories, because there are these much bigger effects, like being able to get a job and engage in other aspects of society. So that's what I often think about in terms of why it's so important to tell these stories and get these images out there.
Thank you, Christina. Ruth, how important is it that young girls can see people like them represent in media?
Yeah, again, hugely important, and I think it links somewhat to the last question about role models. So you can see people on TV or on billboards or on in the newspaper, wherever it might be. It gives you that sense that you can go on to do that. And I think in in my context in football, that's definitely something that is improving. Over the past few years, women's football has gone from strength to strength in terms of the commercial viability and the amount of media attention it gets. And, more and more women are having opportunities to be a full-time professional athlete, which frankly didn't exist 10 years ago, 15 years ago. So I think there are great strides being made in it, but I'm just going to attach myself onto what Christina said a minute ago about the idea of stories. And I think that's the really powerful aspect of this visibility, right? About the stories and some of it in terms of overcoming challenges or overcoming barriers or highlighting some of the really positive stuff that people go through, because there's a story behind everyone involved in sports, isn't it? And I think some of the most powerful things I'm seeing at the minute, one of the good things to come out of social media, I think, is actually it gives people opportunities and it gives people platforms who maybe aren't right at the top of the game, but it gives people platforms to share their own stories and make themselves visible and actually challenge some of the negative stereotypes around women in sport from, without that commercial backing, if that makes sense. So yeah, no, the visibility of female athletes is absolutely huge. And again, I'm starting to see more and more kind of almost like bottom up kind of ground level campaigns about championing the stories and championing the right of women to exist, and not just exist but thrive in sports that have traditionally been male dominated. So yeah, it's absolutely something that I'm really keen to see more of, and would encourage everyone to to share and things like that, because it can only grow, I think, further.
Thank you, Ruth. I don't know about you, but I am really inspired by the knowledge and experience of our incredible panelists. Before we finish, we have one last question for all our panelists. When you think back on your life in sports, what actions or programs have been successful in increasing girls' and women's participation in sports, and what we can learn from this? Chelsea, would you like to begin?
Yeah, sure, Julie. That is a really good question, because I can tell you a couple of my experience of that question. Let's see. Let me read that question again. Okay. Well, it is involved with Special Olympics. Well, I'm also in CrossFit Special Olympics, and I was only a girl at the only time, But until last month or so, I had a talk with a couple athletes from Special Olympics, like my best friend Amy. I asked her if she wanted to try CrossFit with me, and she got, like I said earlier, she got fear. She wasn't sure she's strong enough or can do it. But I keep complimenting her, keep talking to her like, oh, you have a lot of confidence. Don't give up home. Come and try it out. So she came with me that first day, and she loved it. And she said thank you to me, and I was a good teammate, good leader, and she loved it. And ever since then, she started going to class with me two times a week, and that was awesome. So I would recommend that, like, athlete like us or coach or mentor, like, talk to the female athlete and like, like, talk to them, like, encourage them to come in the sport. And like, example, this is what I'm trying to do right now, because I play softball and basketball with all these guys on my team, and there's no female athlete. I kid you not. Because we're the highest level of a division, so my division with all guys right now, and it's just me. So I'm trying to help these other female athletes, like, get into the sport. Don't be afraid. and don't be afraid, and don't be lose your confidence. And to order to do that, I would that we can have a talk with these female athletes, like encourage them, like don't be afraid, and also like we can make them comfortable to join a sport that they want to try. Like I did, example, I was scared to try the powerlifting because I didn't think I could do it, but all the coaches finally let me do it. I convinced myself and to do it, so I did, and I became the first female powerlifter. But I'm also past year I've been approached by a lot of athletes lately who come up and ask me how I'm doing the powerlifting. And the most question I got from that female athlete was they were self-conscious of their look because we have to wear this singlet. So most of those athletes like, oh, I don't think I would. I was like, those judges and the coaches, the boy will look beyond that. They won't even care what you look like in that uniform. They'll be respectful. They'll be proud of you, how overcome you are, how strong you are. So I would just, help these female athletes encourage themselves, and what I was, that's what I would do. And the coaches would be awesome to help all these other athletes as a female and encourage them. And that's what I would do because I learned from my past because I didn't let people help me. I didn't trust anybody. But now I'm trusting more people so I can be able to help other athletes like myself. So that's what I want to do for the future for the female athlete to join our sport and join my team as well. I hope that answered your question, Julia.
Thank you, Chelsea.
You're welcome.
Then Christina.
Thanks. I think for me, what was really important and what I think we have to keep thinking of and contributing to is the fact that I really benefited when I was coaching from a coaching internship and scholarship. And essentially what that created was a job and a position for me where there wasn't one before. And it gave me the opportunity to learn and be a coach as a paid job. When, as Ruth mentioned, my colleagues were all men and the opportunities there were mostly for men. And so it's made me reflect to think that going forward, we have to invest resources and funding towards those types of opportunities and not just think that they're going to happen organically on their own. We're not all starting from the same starting point, and whether that's related to being a woman or having a disability, we really, when we are in a position to create other opportunities, I think we have to find resourcing and funding to support these types of targeted scholarships and other opportunities so that we create the opportunity where it might not exist previously. And so I've certainly benefited from that, and it's given me experience that I could then build on. And I've been trying to work to find ways to create some of those opportunities. Another example is we run the International Paralympic Committee grant programs, for instance, to support athletes who are trying to get to qualification events or international events that are, expensive to get to. And we have national Paralympic committees who then say, these are the athletes that we want to send. And if they only select male athletes, then we have a requirement to go back to them and say, why haven't you identified any female athletes for these opportunities? And so that's just another way that we're trying to really kind of force the system to ensure greater equity and opportunity for women and girls where it might not exist.
Thank you, Christina. Then Ruth.
Yeah, thank you. Again, really great question, and we've already had two really, really good answers. I think for me, the biggest lesson that I'm always quite mindful of, I think based on my experiences growing up particularly, is about visibility. We know that women are take part in sport less than men, whether that's as a coach or a participant or, you know, a referee, whatever capacity it's in. And I think on an individual level, that can be quite lonely sometimes if you're the only girl. And Chelsea, you've spoken to your experiences really nicely today about how you have at times been, you know, felt lonely or been fearful. And I think visibility of other women in similar spaces, and whether that goes back to the last questions about, you know, women in the media or role modeling on a local level, I think that for me is the big lesson that I've taken. And what I mean by that, and maybe some tangible things that we think about, are things like championing women in sports. And whether that's championing, so again, Chelsea, you gave an example on like an interpersonal level about how your friend didn't want to go to CrossFit, and you've championed her, you've pulled her along with you to go, no, come on, you can do this. So again, a challenge to, I guess, all of us on an individual level, like, can we champion the women that we know in a similar way? Or is it more championing at an organisational level, like Christina, you've just talked there about scholarships, and actually not just saying that we're an inclusive organisation, actually putting your money and your resources where your mouth is, and championing, you know, talented up and coming women into coaching and leadership positions. Because, and again, I'm going to back onto Christina, you said earlier on, you know, the collective voice of women and the power in numbers. I think that's kind of what I'm getting at. Like, we are outnumbered, but there's more of us now than there ever was 10 years ago, and there's more of us than there was 20 years ago, and hopefully in 10 years' time there'll be even more of us. So can we increase visibility? Can we champion the women around us? Can we champion the women we know are doing, you know, fantastic work in sport in whatever capacity that they're doing? Is what I try and do in my research, my personal life, my coaching, my everything.
Thank you, Ruth. Today we have heard from 3 amazing women who play important roles in sport. Here in Special Olympics, we know that our coaches play an important role in welcoming new athletes. If you want to learn more about coaching, please check out our coaching courses on the Special Olympics online learning portal. The link to the online learning portal is in the chat. Then Special Olympics website also has a lot of material about sport and coaching. Be sure to check out the website. Be sure to keep checking our YouTube channel. We will post all webinar recordings there so you can watch them back or share them with your friends. Then next webinar will be about pathways to leadership for women in sports. In this webinar, we will have more excellent guests and panelists in the field of sport and Special Olympics. Register now if you haven't already, so you don't miss out. Finally, thank you for our great panelists, and thank you again to our sponsor Aerie for their support of our first Women in Sport webinar series. Have a great Friday and weekend.